So Dave, do you want to say a couple things and see if he can hear, like, in the mic, and then I'll have him speak in the mic? So Dave is going to try to speak and see if you can hear him, and then we're going to have you go on the mic. So just give us a minute.
Malik, I'm speaking into the microphone in what is a fairly normal tone of voice in hopes you can hear me.
Can you say that again?
Dave, I can hear you clearly. I'm speaking in a regular tone. I don't know if I'm right up against the mic, but I'm curious to know if you can hear me.
Yeah, I think that'll work.
Okay.
Good evening, Commissioners.
Good evening. Good evening.
I will be your host this evening, so I'd like to call this meeting to order. So we had a big week last week. We released our first set of draft maps to the public for public comment and review. So I want to start this meeting by kind of talking through that a little bit, how you guys think things went, things that we didn't include that we think we should include next time, things that you liked about it, etc. So with that, I will turn the floor over to you for comments.
I thought the meeting went well. I thought the meeting went well. It was a good overview of what we presented and where we were at the moment. I'm not really sure what else much different we would have done to lay that out. Maybe next time we just, instead of splitting the districts by region and population, maybe we put it together and split them in half. So like somebody does 5 and 4. So you say District 1 is this neighborhood, this population. District 2. But beyond that, I don't think anything.
I would agree with Commissioner Frost. I thought the map we put together, based on our original intent to try to respect area commission and large civic association and council boundaries, was good work, although again, as we all know, it was based on data that we cannot use for our final maps. So I thought it was a useful exercise. We're anxious, obviously, to start working with data that will actually inform the final set of maps. I think one thing that we do need to talk about, maybe this would be an opportunity to do it, would be we're charged with producing 3 maps. If we use the same approach in producing another map based on 2020 data, I think that may be our preferred map. I don't know yet. Obviously, that's something for the commission to consider. But we need to think about how we might approach the task differently to produce the other 2 maps, whether we throw those assumptions aside, use a different set of criteria. Basically, our strategy for creating the other 2 maps that council will consider. Right now, I don't know that we have a strategy for that. So,
I'm glad that you brought that up. Part of this evening's meeting will be to think about how we want to strategize going forward for these new maps, so that we can have a clear path forward. And just to make an announcement, so I spoke with Esri, still no 2020 data updated in the system. So I emailed the direct contact to hopefully get a hard date on when we will have that data. Melissa, who is our helper from DOT, has been looking into it and following the blog that they post where they update the information. But I sent an email directly to Esri because I know how important that data is to us getting our work done and the timeline that we have set. So I'm hoping they'll be able to provide me a firm deadline on when that information will be there. I know that the email that Melissa said that they had some 2020 layers in the Atlas version of Esri, which should mean that they're close to getting it into their redistricting software, but we do not have that yet. So I wanted to take this meeting to do some planning and thinking ahead so that we're all ready. Once we have that data, we can hit the ground running. Commissioner Cabot, did you have any comments about last week?
No, I thought it was fine.
Okay. Chair Moore, did you have any comments?
No comment.
Okay, great. So from that, I think we discussed the schedule a little bit last time, but we didn't go into detail, so I'm going to pull that schedule up because we were supposed to talk about it a couple of times ago, but we ran out of time. So if you can give me 1 second, I will pull that up. So this is a rough version of our schedule for oh, snap, sorry, I didn't realize you guys can't see that over there yet. Okay, so this is a rough schedule of our meetings for the next couple of months. So we'll still continue to meet on Wednesdays, every Wednesday this month. The last time we spoke about this, we decided to extend the meeting an additional hour from 5:30 to 8:30 versus adding additional days. The one thing that I would like to keep in mind is that it's a possibility that we will have to extend into additional days, depending on how long it takes us to get this data from Esri, which is obviously out of our hands, but I'm hoping that, they said early September, so I'm hoping by the end of this week or before our meeting, our scheduled meeting next week, I will keep you all posted on the arrival of that data, and hopefully I will have an email back from their team with a harder date on when the data will be available. But that's September. October is pretty much the same thing, except for because we're doing the map presentation of the second round of maps tentatively on October 7th. We will meet on that Tuesday, October 5th, as our final meeting prior to the release of the data. And then you will continue to do your regular Wednesday meetings. As a reminder to everyone that's watching, this schedule is tentative and subject to change. Are there any questions or comments as it relates to schedule, or does this work for everyone so far?
Do we have that, someplace where I can see it, because I can't see that?
Yes, I can make this bigger, but it is in the team folder for CRDC. Are there any other questions or comments about the schedule? Seeing none, I will move to the next agenda item. The next agenda item is a game plan for creating the maps and completing them. So I know Commissioner Paul discussed how we were going to do like kind of one map and then how we're going to nuance the other two maps. So now is a time for you all to kind of talk about that and talk about how you want to strategize moving forward with these second draft of maps.
Even though Chair Moore is not here in chambers today, he is on the phone, so I guess I'll give him deference and ask him if he had some thoughts on this topic to share with us. Malik, are you there?
I'll give you deference. I am here, sir. I have a little bit of a lag. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. And so I guess we're discussing at this time our strategy for the other two maps.
That's correct.
Mm-hmm.
And whether we have a strategy or if you have one in mind.
Yeah, so I couldn't hear every detail of the words we were using earlier, but it sounded to me that there were two different philosophical approaches. Would you be able to summarize that for me, Commissioner Paul?
Well, I think that Ms. Walters just used a term that's maybe useful to repeat, and that was nuance. As one method of creating another two maps, let me go ahead and just so you can hear me more clearly. One approach would be to take our first pass at the 2020 data. Presumably, I think we are of the mind that we should take the districts we have established with 2010 data, refine them using 2020 data to produce one map that basically uses the same philosophy of respecting area commission boundaries and so forth. And I think the term that Ms. Walters used may be appropriate as one way of creating another two maps. That is to, as we went through that process, we did come up with several alternatives along the way and maybe revisit some of those alternatives in terms of how we could pair adjacent neighborhoods and so forth to produce another set of maps. Another approach could be to throw out that assumption altogether and build a map or maps using some other criterion altogether, as opposed to the assumption that we were going to follow the Area Commission Civic Association boundaries. I'm not saying I would be necessarily a fan of that map, but that is an option to produce another map for council to consider. So I guess there are several approaches, any number of approaches we could take, but those are some that we probably should consider tonight.
Yep. And I'm glad you made this distinction. I'm glad you made this distinction because where my questions lie are we all unified in our choice to make sure that any future maps we make are only with 2020 data?
I would say yes, because that is our charge, isn't it?
That is. So as we talk tonight about our strategy, that whatever strategy we move forward with, we're agreeing will be based on the full release of 2020 data.
Agreed. I think everyone's agreed.
Yes. And so fundamentally, I think we're all on the same page. And it sounds like we have different approaches to creating the 3 maps. We have a map that we're still waiting to see how it's impacted by 2020 data. And we could do a map where we threw out all assumptions all together, and we could do another map that kept area commissions intact. That could be our intent. And depending on what the data led us to doing as an action step, would be the reality of how we move forward based on those numbers and how the totals were lining up with everything else. Would we all agree that that's where we are, kind of, if we're beginning to form 4 walls around our work, that these are the walls that we see formed around us?
I would agree.
I'm sorry, I think that we would do one with the communities for sure, but it might be helpful for one of the maps maybe not to be solely based on that. Because if otherwise we'll have 3 very, very similar maps. And I think it might be helpful for comparison's sake, that one of the maps maybe not rely as specifically heavily on the Columbus communities. And one of the things I saw with the map that Melinda, the woman with the
Melissa.
Melissa. Sorry, Melissa. That Melissa shared, that they did have like the voting precincts as one of the layers that were involved. And so when we're looking at how we're cutting up streets and neighborhoods, we might use one of the maps with the voting precincts as one of the primary layers that we're looking at.
In fact, I just had someone ask me whether we were using voting precincts in our work, and I explained we weren't up to this point, but that's, yeah.
The voting precincts have always been in Esri as a layer that I can turn on and off. So they've been available, but that was just not the route that you all chose when you're on your first semester. But the voting precincts, and then additionally, the police precincts will also be added to the 2020 data, so you all can look at that as an additional tool if that's something you want to consider.
Yeah, I would say as we're playing, and I know that as I'm in the redistricting online, I'm seeing layers that I had never even thought of. And I think part of it is we just kind of jumped in and we didn't really see what all was available because we didn't really know. And so I think that as we're moving forward, we can look at what all is available to us, especially while we're waiting on the 2020 information, and maybe try to figure out different ways to make the pie.
I did have one thought, and I just throw this out for consideration. And I don't know that I know the answer, and I think the answer is no. But here's the question. By using the traditional neighborhood boundaries, as the city has outlined them, literally, on the map, are we perpetuating any inequities that might be baked in effect, to those boundaries? Again, I just offer it for consideration.
I think not on purpose. I think what I would say is that some of those pre-established Columbus community boundaries may not exist in the same formal way that they did previously. Like, I know that, for instance, the neighborhood north of Broad is, on the Near East Side, is considered NOBO, north of Broad, but it's considered the Near East Side when we're talking about the neighborhood, the communities maps. And so there are some nuances, and as neighborhoods are changing, things are changing where the name might not mean the same thing anymore. And if we're not as familiar, we wouldn't know, but hopefully the comments will help with that.
Good point.
Also, I'm sorry, this is a side comment or question. How do I get back to the public comments thing?
When you ask how do you get back to that, what do you mean?
I saw it when I logged in one time where we were supposed to be able to go in and see the comments as they're coming in.
So the comments as they're coming in is where I see them, because I have to review them and add them, because they don't automatically add. But you should be able to see all public comments when you go through the public comment tool, which is public, and so you can click on public comments to see what comments they left, because you can like certain comments similar to how you would do on like social media.
And it would
Perfect,
look like
thank you.
this. It'd be this screen, and it's the main web page link on the districting page.
Thank you.
We're going to talk about the public comments at some point this evening as well. I just wanted to talk about some other things first. Additional thoughts, comments, and concerns about strategy?
Council Walters? Can you hear me?
Yes, Chair.
I just want to share that I have about a 15-second delay. I found it to be more effective to listen on Facebook. So if you do ask a question, if you could give me that grace.
Most certainly.
I just want to share.
If you're still talking, we cannot hear you.
Yeah, I've muted myself, Lucy. I'm listening.
Okay, thank you, Malik.
Did you all have anything else regarding strategy?
Not at this time.
Okay. I will then move into, so we got some information from Melissa regarding the 2020 data, so I'm going to put that on the screen so you all can discuss kind of how districts have grown and how we can kind of work with that information and maybe begin to think about how we can group it. I believe you all have that email. I think she CC'd all of you on that email too, so you can look at it on your laptops, but I will put it on the screen for purposes of viewing it. I know last time that you all started with your process, you started looking at the numbers and how you could group different communities together based on the numbers. And this will just help you kind of think ahead. So when you get to the actual data, you have information and you're like, okay, so we thought about that, we can add you. So I want to utilize part of the meeting tonight to really just help us prepare so that when we come to the districts, because districts in the maps, because we have to do 3, getting a game plan ready so when we come in, it's a matter of plugging those districts in, seeing what works, what doesn't work, and then kind of just making some edits or reconfigurations based off of that information.
I thought it was very interesting, the neighborhoods, obviously, that grew specifically, some by much greater proportion than others. I suppose for our work, though, it isn't so much the proportion that matters, it's the raw numbers and how they would change relative to the size of each of the districts that we've created. It suggests to me that maybe where we would start is look at the ones that changed population by the largest number. That might be a good place to start with preparing new districts using 2020 data. Obviously, the ones that shifted the most are the ones that are going to need the most adjustment.
Yeah, I wouldn't disagree with that. I think the ones that I looked at that grew the most are Brewery District, Far North, Downtown grew drastically, almost 100%, 93%. Fifth by Northwest grew almost 45%. Hayden Run grew 61%. Italian Village by 76%. Rocky Fork Black Lake by almost 45%. Those are probably the largest ones. State of Ohio grew 100%, but that's like a very small one. It was only just doubling in size, so that one didn't mean much, but those are the largest districts. And so when you think about where those places are at with Rocky Fork and Black Lake, Fifth by Northwest, Far North, and Downtown especially, and Brewery District, which is a neighbor of Downtown, and how that grew, you'll want to start thinking of how to configure those districts, because I believe Brewery District and Downtown are both in District 9 currently, And so you'll want to think about how districts may have to change based on that increase in population.
Yes, and the link that she sent with the map also is helpful because you can see on it with the gradients, the percentage of change.
Yes. I can open that up too if you would prefer to have that on the screen versus this Excel spreadsheet.
The link that she sent with the map also.
Can you repeat that?
In the email that Melissa sent, there is a map link that shows the percentage of change by neighborhood. So the dark green is 100%, up to 100%, where the red is like 0, I think, or something like that.
Ms. Walters, I guess what I'm saying, recognizing again the significance of the percent change, but even a percent change of a neighborhood that has a relatively small population, and I'm just going to, I'm sorry, Chair Moore?
Jim, are you trying to speak?
Only when it's convenient.
Okay.
No, I'll continue to listen, and then when you're done, I'll go next to Commissioner Paul.
Thank you, sir. Even a large percent change of a district, I'm sorry, of a neighborhood, a community that has a small population to begin with, won't affect our work so much. I've created another column in the spreadsheet that Melissa sent to us, Ms. Williams, net change, which is just the raw number that the population has changed. And if I sort in descending order by that column, I come up with the Rocky Fork Black Lick District as being the #1 change just in raw population. Northland, #2, Far North, #3, Far East, #4, Hayden Run, and so forth. And I'm just saying, I think for our purposes, having already created a map that we feel is balanced based on the old data, perhaps a good place to start to create as close as we can the same map, or a map based on the same assumptions, would be to start looking at those communities where the population has changed by the greatest number, not necessarily the greatest proportion. Does that make sense? Because that's going to be what throws us out of balance, the raw numbers. Chair Moore?
Yep, I think you said it more succinctly than I could, Commissioner Paul. We've done this before. We've looked at the impact of some of these larger communities, and we figured out where and how we can kind of push in from the outsides. And I think we just continue with what we've been doing. But to your point, the biggest concern for us is the net growth, not the percentage. But here, the point.
My only caveat or different take on that particular is that maybe instead of by specific communities all the way, I mean, I know we have to use that, but also if we look at regions of town where it changed most drastically, that might be helpful as well. Because, so we know that Center City, there's some parts that changed, that got a very, doubled in population size. Some places maybe have dropped by half. And so we could see, based on laying the districts, if we start with the districts that had the most change altogether, so then adjust for the ones that didn't, because it's looking like the central and the north had the most change, whereas the south side didn't have as big of a change at all. So we may not be as far off on the bottom districts as we are on the ones that had the biggest change. So,
Agreed.
Yeah,
Agreed.
same way, different way to skin it. Yeah.
Yep.
So I'm not wedded to the map that we put out last week. I think it was a waste of time. I would like to have a tutorial on how to use this S3 tool now that I have access to it. I haven't been able to spend much time on it, but I'd like to go home and work on it, as that's why I asked for the license. And I'd like somebody to teach me how to do it rather than just send me a PDF of this is how you do it. And then I'm going to start again with the Columbus communities and try to figure out how to keep most of them intact as I put together a map. And I can't figure out how to get started.
I do have, as one of my agenda items today, is to walk through a little bit of the Esri tools, because I assume that you guys would have questions once you got your licenses. So that's on my agenda today. Since we don't have the data yet, I added that as an agenda item. So we'll get to that a little later in the meeting.
Okay.
Any other thoughts on the information that we have and how to kind of start getting prepared for what we hope is next week? Okay, hearing nothing. I'll move. Oh, did you have something?
No.
Okay. We'll move on to the next portion of my makeshift agenda for this evening. Okay. So the next thing that I had actually was reviewing the public comment report for this week. So I couldn't figure out how to export it, so I'm going to open it up. I'm going to kind of read through some of the main comments that we got, because I couldn't figure out how to export it to you all. I'm going to work with Melissa to make sure I can send an export report that you all can have at your own disposal. But for now, I just wanted to talk through what I found were the main themes from the comments that we received this past week as it relates to the map. We got a decent amount of comments. The biggest thing that I heard from the public was as it relates to this section right here, lumping 5th by Northwest in with the Hilltop District. A lot of the comments essentially said that they feel that the populations are vastly different, and so most people are viewing 5th by Northwest as Upper Arlington and Grandview, and so the demographic of the people that live there is vastly different from a socioeconomic standpoint. And with that, they think that this sliver should be removed from the District 7 just because it doesn't fit the Franklinton and Hilltop based off how people view neighborhoods and community. So I've been hearing from both sides, both from the Hilltop and from the Greater Hilltop Area Commission and residents from 5th by Northwest saying that they didn't think that those two went together properly and that representation may not be given to the people that live there properly if they are lumped in with that addition. So that was probably the biggest thing that that people talked about. And then there was some instruction on where to make different cuts on the map, especially with Clintonville and them being in 3 different districts currently. So there were some conversations around that. And let's see. I guess we can start by addressing that. I know that I think they may have, I think we may have a visitor here today to talk about that. I mean, I did get an email. Okay. Hi, welcome to the Council Residential District and Commission meeting.
I'm James White.
Do you want to come up and use a mic?
Yeah.
You want to sit right here? I'll put that on for now.
I didn't prepare to be on TV, so sorry for my appearance.
Nobody's watching.
Hello, my name is James White. I'm the Greater Hilltop Area Commissioner. I did forward a letter to you guys regarding our concerns and our comments about that sliver that's up, included in our district. We all came to the conclusion last night that that area doesn't accurately represent either Franklinton or the Hilltop, just based on its demographic and how far away it is from the rest of the community. Our biggest concern is that somebody's going to move into that area. I think you guys called it the North by 5th section. And our concern is that someone's going to move into that neighborhood and try to represent us in a way that's not very inclusive in the fact that we in the Hilltop are living day to day in the Hilltop, and someone who is from that district or in that section is living there and more or less pretending that they kind of represent us or feel our same struggles. I also think that that section is served by a separate community or a separate school district. That was another one of our concerns. I've been making comments on the Facebook page because I didn't know if I was going to have to leave or not. Is it okay if I just read those out loud, maybe?
Please, thank you.
Okay, so I guess one of my comments was, are you guys able to overlap this map with the current commission boundaries? Just to kind of get an overall view of how this compares to our current commission boundaries. Because another one of our concerns is the greater Hilltop, such as Valley View, is in District, I think, 3. Along with, I think there's another section of just the overall Greater Hilltop Area Commission that's not included in our District 7.
So there is a layer in Esri that allows us to overlap the area commissions. I can turn that on for you so that you can see that. But we did utilize that as a guide somewhat while we were looking at the maps. So the thing that you see in pink, the pink outline outlines all of the area commission boundaries. This one, I believe, is the Greater Hilltop Area Commission.
Yeah, can we zoom in on that section of town and get a closer look?
Thank you.
Does this illustrate what you were saying in terms of?
Yes, and just to go back to our commission boundary, again, we feel like that represents us better. Again, our biggest concern was that whole section, it's too far away from our community to kind of lump it in with us, and their makeup and their socioeconomics are different than ours vastly, and that was our biggest issue, is that somebody's going to move into Upper Arlington, that Grandview section, in a neighborhood that doesn't actually share our struggles and our values, or more or less our community makeup, because they are so vastly different.
Commissioner Foster, do you have a comment?
I had a question about Valley View, but I found it on the map, just where it was specifically. And is it it's a neighborhood association, or is it a?
It's just part of our area commission. Our area commission is the 270 loop, along with the 70 above it. It's just
But Valley View is not in the city of Columbus.
correct. It's in the township.
Oh, okay, yeah, so we're only able to draw into it specifically the city of Columbus.
Well, sorry, not specifically Valley View, but the railroad tracks, that blue section that's in between 270 and 70, that's technically all of our area commission boundary, and we were just kind of wondering why that wasn't more or less included with us.
And I don't recall the exact point at which we drew that particular line. I will say that we may ultimately be forced to make some decisions like that, particularly with regard to the districts that don't have many points of contact with other districts. And you've been following this process enough that you understand, I think, why. That there's only so many places we can,
Commissioner Paul, can you
Adjust.
speak closer to your mic? We can't hear you.
only so many places we can adjust the size of a district to account for this very tight tolerance between districts of less than 1% between the largest and the smallest difference. And that may be an area where we attempted to do that, I'm not sure. Does anyone else remember this particular situation? I don't recall when we made that particular boundary.
I think it was in the last redo, but it was probably due to the 1% question. And then so as we're looking at the population changes and for 2020, I think we'll be able to see, and then think about the comments that many people had about the 5th by Northwest section. And so hopefully on the next passes, you'll see, as we redo some of it, that it's more aligned, but then some of the things like the Valley View, we might not have as much control, as Commissioner Paul was saying.
That was kind of my point, I guess. We may have more options as we get closer to the center of the city to make those adjustments as opposed to the districts that are on the periphery where we have few choices we can make.
Are those two different colors?
Yes. It's, yep.
You have District 2 on the top and District 7 on the top.
Got it, thank you.
Another one of my questions was, can you guys share the table that you guys presented a couple seconds ago, along with a link to the CSER map that you guys have created with either just the commissioners, or if you can share that to the general public, that'd be great too.
You're asking to be shared the table that I just shared, and what was the other?
The map, the actual map that you guys have built in the Columbus mapping tool. Just the population growth and the decrease. Just I personally want that information for our community to just see how our area has grown or shrunk over the past 10 years with that census data.
I will need to check to make sure that information can be publicly shared. I mean, it's being able to be shown in our meeting, but I don't know that we're able to share it en masse with the public, so I just need to double check.
And then I think my last comment was, are you guys planning for the population growth while you're making these maps? I noticed that on the data that you shared earlier, with the neighborhoods that have grown in populations in such large amounts, I guess in my head, realistically, they're not going to grow like that again in the next 10 years. It's going to be those other areas that haven't grown at all in the past 10 years because they do make up the large amount of abandoned lots, abandoned homes, vacant lots, and things like that. So those those in retrospect are going to be the communities that are going to grow the largest over the next 10 years as we see our population in central Ohio boom. Is that something you guys are considering and thinking about too while you guys are making these maps?
We are not projecting.
Yes. In
We are
fact,
dealing with 2020 numbers.
we
2020.
cannot do so. Again, these very tight tolerances that we need to follow in terms of the size of districts. The charter does provide this whole process will be repeated 10 years from now, and so that will be our successor's problem, I guess would be one way to put it. It's a good point. I do think there are some areas of the city that grew quite significantly over the last 10 years that still have the potential for some growth. I'm seeing in my part of town, Hamilton Road, for example, the Rocky Fork community, as the city knows it, as still probably continuing that trajectory for some time. But I understand what you're saying, that if we were able to bake in some assumptions about future growth, it might make the map last longer, be accurate longer, but that's not really what we've been charged to do. We have to work with the data we're given. So,
I think that's part of the reason they have it done every 10 years, so that when things do change, the map is able to be adjusted with that growth. It's similar to how they do it at the state and federal level. The only changes that will happen to the map as things are moving on, if there's like parts of the city that are annexed in and incorporated, and things that are, I guess for lack of better words, seceded from the city and taken out. But even then, it will be just an adjustment to the boundaries. As far as the actual numbers, a full map will be redone every 10 years.
That's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you for your time. Thank you for visiting us today.
Thank you.
I believe that there were additional comments on Facebook. Lucy, did you have additional comments, or those were all the comments? Okay. Those are all mine. That's okay. Some of the additional comments that we got about the map are where we were cutting Clintonville. So this one comment says, seems to be wrong to put most of Clintonville in District 9, but put North Clintonville in District 4, lumping it in with the Morse Road and 161 corridors over to Cleveland. Completely different character to those neighborhoods. So that was something that came up. Let's see, what are the other?
Have you all heard of a place called Delawanda?
Yeah.
Where is that at?
I have no idea. I approved the comment, but I don't know where Delawanda is.
Delawanda is Morse Road extended west, just below Graceland Shopping Center.
Okay, so like, is it like, so it's Clintonville-esque, but
It's
not
in-
Clintonville? So that's nearby Clintonville, right?
It's part of Clintonville.
Okay.
Well, it's probably part of Beachwold. Actually, it's probably considers itself Delawanda, but it's in the Clintonville Area Commission.
Is it Forest? There's a major street which would have been Morse Road extended if Morse Road had been extended.
To Bethel.
Was Forest something? I'm trying to remember, but no? Okay.
No? And
Anyway.
And maybe Delawanda.
I'm sorry. It's the first I've heard that word. Oh, there's a Delawanda Avenue. See, it's
Yeah.
not just out of nowhere.
One of the other comments that we got was that the north of Trabury Road between the Saddle River and 270 should be in District 1.
I'm sorry, could you say that again?
Sure.
Slower?
Sure, I'm sorry. The area north of Trabury Road between the Scioto River and I-270 should be in District 1.
I'm sorry, it's Rathbone Avenue that is Morse Road extended, and then Delawanda is a north-south piece at the end of it.
Gotcha. I think this is where we got into the issue of contiguity. That's where things started to get really complicated with Riverside Drive and
That little funny strip.
yeah.
And it's interesting. I was looking at the comments. It seemed like they liked it better the other way before we switched it, and we had that part in District 1. They're saying that north part of District 2 makes more sense with District 1 than where it is. But I'm like, I don't know how to connect that.
What was that, Chair? Chair Moore, did you want to say something?
That was a very delayed response to Commissioner Paul's comment. It's probably more effective for me to just be, but what I was agreeing with Commissioner Paul said, as he recalled, in response to Commissioner Paul's, as he recalled how we got the district created.
Okay. Okay, sorry, I heard you say something, so.
Another comment that we received was German Village and Marion Village should be a part of a district that includes downtown, Victorian Village, Short North, etc. It doesn't make sense to have German Village and Marion Village in the same district as areas near Obetz and Lockbourne. That was something that came up. And another comment on the way that districts 3 and 4 are created is that they span from the edges almost to downtown at 9670, and they said that they'd rather that districts 3 and 4 are similar to other districts, draw like a border around Route 161 and make 3 and 4 below 161, 3 above 161, and 4 below it.
Oh.
I think those are probably the biggest comments that we saw. The other ones were a little bit more nuanced, but in large part, there's just a lot of concern about having the Hilltop and Franklinton lumped in with Grandview and Upper Arlington. Even though Grandview and Upper Arlington are technically separate cities that are not incorporated in this map, they are in close proximity to 5th by Northwest, and so they're seen as similar, as what I gathered from the comments.
It's frustrating not at this point to be able to actually model it, but I see that issue as being one that's probably fairly easy to address. Living in the part of town that someone mentioned about districts 3 and 4, I see that as being much more problematic just because that would be a radical departure from our philosophy up to this point of trying to follow the city's community definitions. Granted that right now districts 3 and 4 kind of cut the Northland Community Council area in half, but nevertheless, they are two distinct communities as far as the Department of Neighborhoods is concerned, and we've been trying to follow their boundaries. And also that the area east of I-270 and the area west of I-270 in Northland are vastly different in terms of development patterns, housing stock, and so forth. So I'm not sure just taking 161 as a southern boundary makes a lot of sense in terms of communities of like nature. But it's something we can look at. That may be one of the options we can look at as we go to the second and third iteration of the maps.
I saw a comment on the map and then also heard a couple comments offline about District 8, that it's too big. Because like they were saying that the areas northeast and District 8 and then the northwest and then southeast are really different. Like Linden wouldn't necessarily be bunched up with somewhere like almost to Refugee Road, just based on where we're talking about. So that might be helpful when we're looking at districts 3 and 4, because we may rotate. Like we might see that we can turn this thing and adjust it and see how it cuts it differently. And that might get out at some of the challenges we're having on the north and the east, which I think is really we're dealing with landmass. And they're very some of the places on the east side are pretty similar, but they're socioeconomically they're pretty different. And so I think I'm with you actually on the frustration part, because I would like to just like start moving stuff around. Yeah. But it's helpful, I guess, to be able to kind of ruminate on the comments before we dig into it.
Yep.
Another comment that was received said that North Linden doesn't want to be lumped in with the far north neighborhoods, as those communities have different issues as well.
That's truth.
So this is kind of just the comment period. I just wanted to provide this information to you. And again, as soon as I learn how to export it, which will be tomorrow, I will send this data to you. But you can already see the comment data if you go to the public comment tool and utilize that tool to look at the public comments that are there, because they're visible there as well. Are there any other things that you guys want to discuss from the comments in this meeting? Seeing none, I will move into, this is a time for us to walk through the tool and how to utilize it. So you guys all have your laptop, so you can open your tool, and then if you have questions about how to do certain things, this can be used as a Q&A period on how to do that. I will, again, keep you guys updated as soon as possible when we have access to the data. I'm hoping that it will come soon. But in the meantime, I can show you some tips and tricks on how to use Esri so that you're able to at least play with the data at home. And then keeping in mind that each new district will have roughly 13,100 additional people in each district for roughly 100,000 people per district. And so when you're looking at the numbers that I shared with you about the growth of the districts, and I thought it was very important that Commissioner Paul shared that when you're looking at raw data in terms of numbers of how different areas of the city grew versus the percentage, because the percentage is just based on its old numbers, but the actual raw data of which neighborhoods grew, and thinking about how those communities are put into the map, thinking about what communities can be put together with that information in mind, and knowing that that the deviation will now be around 1,000 people per district. So a little bit more than what we had before, but still not much when you consider that from a population standpoint, each district will be adding 13,000 people.
Will you all change the target for us when we get the updated information, like the target deviation or whatever on our tool?
So what will happen when you get the tool is that she will create new plans. And so this plan will be just a plan we can have that we can reference back to, but she'll create new plans, and that's what you'll work in with Ezra. So it'll be like Columbus 2020, V1, V2, V3, so you'll have 3 maps. And then Esri also allows you to compare, you can only compare 2, but you can compare maps. So when you have the different three maps, if you want to compare like 1 and 2 or 1 and 3, you'll be able to do that. And then she did also let me know that she'll be able to add in a layer that is this map. So even though I can't recreate this map in Esri, like I'd have to still recreate it, I can add this as a layer. And so how I identified Columbus communities, I was able to click on that and make that add that to District 1. I'll be able to do the same thing with these. So when we go through utilizing the tool, I'll be able to say, if we want to keep District 1 as District 1, I can say identify and then add to District 1. And so it will create whatever District 1 was in this map and put that in the second map. So that was a helpful tool that Melissa shared with me when I spoke with her last week. So it may not be as challenging as we were thinking to recreate this map. But as you can see, there may be some areas that you want to change based off the comments that you're receiving from the public.
So can I get that map on my screen?
I believe this map is already in your tool.
Yes, this is in the Esri districting tool for each of us. We each have our own copy
Okay,
of
okay.
that map.
So I'm going to open shared plans.
Yep.
I got nothing.
Yeah.
Is that the first time you saw the shared plans tab?
No.
Okay, then
Yes, once you had logged in, you needed to contact Ms. Williams, and she needed to give you access to the
She
plan.
did that.
She did that, okay,
Yes.
then,
Do you want to try logging out?
Okay. Okay. And this was...
Is the run of show from last week the best place to see which neighborhoods are in each district? Okay, thank you.
Yes.
It's called CRDC Round 1 Map Info. They don't. Yes, in your online packet, you have it's called CRDC Round Number 1 Map Informational Packet, and in that document, you have the link, you have the area commissions per district, and you also have list by area commissions and a few of the civic associations by district, so you can kind of see what the makeup of that is.
Perfect, thank you.
You're welcome.
Well, as you can see, I am struggling here to get...
Do you want to see what Lucy just said, or do you want to go to, you're trying to go to Esri?
I was just trying to go to Esri,
Okay,
and I thought I had bookmarked it.
right there.
Okay, got it. I keep getting that message. Okay, Asri.
And then click on that one.
That one? That's one that I just made up as I was trying to start one.
Okay. Commissioner Paul, can I see how it came up on your screen? Just so I can make sure that,
Yeah, you want me to log out and log in?
Yes,
See, okay, let me see. I guess I just sign out. So, and I'm always getting this message, which I just ignore. And then this is what I'm seeing. And there's JC, that's Commissioner Cabot's plan.
yeah, it's the same one for all of you. I'm not sure why it's not showing up in yours.
So this is why I'd like to have Melissa come and give us a tutorial. Now, I may be the only stupid one that needs that, in which case I don't mean to put everybody else through it, but that's what I need.
Yeah, I think that the tutorial that she gave us is online.
Yeah,
But-
I don't want that. I want a teacher.
Okay, well, that's why I was saying that I just need to figure out why your plan's not uploading. And then once we can figure out why your plan's not uploading, it's easy to teach you how to use it. It's just a matter of getting the plan. So I don't know why your plan is not showing. Can you go to my plans, recent plans?
And that's just,
That's the one that you made, yeah, I know.
and I didn't do anything. It just, I was trying to start the system. See how it worked.
I will send her an email to figure out why, and let her know that it's not, for whatever reason, it's not popping up in your software.
Okay?
And then we can go from there.
But with all due respect, is it possible for Melissa to come to our meeting next Wednesday?
I'm going to see if she can meet with you separately, because if we have the data next Wednesday, I
Okay.
think
Sure,
it'd be
that is
more
fine.
advantageous to use the
Yep,
time for maps.
that'd be great, thank you.
But I will find out.
Okay.
Are one of you willing to at least, are you fine, comfortable looking at another person's screen so that we can, if there's questions,
Sure,
we can kind of
Yeah.
talk through those over here? So I guess this time is really to say, now that you guys have access to the tool, what are the questions, what are things that you need help with? And I can kind of walk you through whatever the questions are that you have for now.
Can you show us how you assigned and or reassigned? I think I kind of know, but just for walking through.
Sure. And are you wanting to assign or reassign specific areas, or are you talking about what we did with the Columbus communities?
Yeah, I guess right now it doesn't matter, I guess. So let me say we're taking that part of District 7 that we're talking about and putting it into District 9.
Okay. So you will go to the Create tab, and do you see that box that has the select geographies, excuse me, by rectangle? So you can click on that, and then treat it as though you were creating like a text box over the area that you want to include in that district. But to do that, it'll say district at the top, and you see where it says district unassigned. Let me make this a little bit bigger. Okay, so where it says district unassigned, you will select the district that you want to add to. So if you want to add that piece of District 7 to District 9, you will click District 9, and then you will take that box, this one right here, and you can create a square over the area that you want to add to District 9, and it will add it to District 9. Now, if it skips any of the pieces of that, where you're like, oh, there's a census block that it didn't catch. There's the one next to it that has select geography by picking them, and you will utilize that one, and that allows you to collect directly on census blocks. Okay, so another way to do that, if you're looking at the Columbus Communities map, like let's say that we have the Columbus Communities map overlaying this. I'm gonna take off area commissions, but I'm gonna put Columbus Communities. So another thing that you may do is, you see where it has this little I, identify a feature? So you'll click that. From that, you can say identify from, and you can click on any of the different layers. So if I wanna do Columbus Communities, I'll click that. Hold on. And so you can see that's Northwest right there in that district. That's the Columbus community from the Columbus Communities map. It's outlined in yellow. And then you scroll down and you can say assign to any district, or you can just change the district at the top and it'll say assign to. So if you want to assign that to District 4, for example, or District 9, you would just click the district you want to assign it to, and it will assign that entire area to that district. I'm sorry?
Got it. Thank you.
Okay, so that's two different ways to add to the districts. You can also do it by polygon, which is where you kind of click a dot and then you take the cursor and drag it, and you click another dot and kind of draw it as a shape, whatever polygon you want to use, and that is this one right here. And those are the three different ways that you create districts in Esri utilizing those three tools. Now, if you want to go back out of these districts and you want to turn off identity and you want to just utilize, oops, sorry, didn't want to open that up again. But if you want to go back and you just want to grab, and you use the hand to just move this around so you can see it without changing the actual districts. And then you have the ability to lock and unlock districts utilizing this feature. So if you make a district and you're like, okay, I don't want to change that one, that's my perfect district, you click lock in this table, which is the table where we saw the numbers and the different population changes. That is kind of where you see that information. You can lock and unlock at your leisure. I suggest zooming in on this map, partially because when you get too far out, Esri will see the entire map as like one area. And so when you zoom in, it allows you to kind of get into the nitty gritty and it won't take the whole area. So that's why when I was creating the districts, you would see me zoom in on the areas to make sure it doesn't zoom and cover the entire area. Other questions?
I guess I just have a question for my colleagues. Assuming that we will get to the point where we can actually start addressing this issue pertaining to 5th by Northwest, do you feel, and it's not a lot of population there, but we need to consider it, Harrison West, for example, should that also move into District 9? Do you have any opinion on that? That's the little sliver below 5th by Northwest that currently connects District 7 with 5th by Northwest. Should it also move, or should it remain in District 7?
in my opinion, it's more similar to 5th by Northwest than it is to the Hilltop.
Fair enough.
Agreed.
Fair enough.
Yeah, I think until I have the updated information, my strategy for this next week will probably be to look at the population changes and do what we did before we had access, which was kind of bunch up neighborhoods and then see where we're at with the number. Because right now, playing in this is, for me, is a little bit more frustrating than it is helpful. Because I figured out how to move things around, and so my districts are way out of balance now, which is great, because I figured out how to do it. But I can't rectify because, like, there is not enough population in here to actually accommodate what we're trying to do. So in the interim, it's like, what is the best way that we can be productive in our time apart from each other so we can come back in a position to, like, really be productive next week?
Agreed.
So I can't.
Is there anything else for the good of the order? This was pretty much all that I had for you since we don't have the information yet and I was expecting to have. If there are other questions or anything else you want to discuss, now is the time. But if not, I'm happy to return some of your time to you this evening, considering that we don't have the data yet.
Can you help us by pointing out, for example, if we want to turn on and off various layers, let's say we want to bring in the voting precincts and look at those, where would we go, which tab would we use to do that, and so forth?
Sure. So you would click on that little caret at the top,
Okay, yep.
and then you'll go to contents. And let me turn my identify off. I just want to go back to here. Okay. And then you go to contents, and then you can say add Lincoln County voting precincts.
Right.
And you can click that layer. Typically, when I'm looking at the map, I have on map, districts, Ohio 2010, and topographic data. The topographic is the background. Ohio 2010 is the census data. Districts are the districts that we create, and map notes is what they put on here to keep on. I've always kept that one on. But when I look at the area commissions, I click on area commission. I can click that off. You can put Columbus communities, or click that off. The Franklin County voting precincts, which you can see now in that green. There's a lot of them. And then the corporate boundary. You can turn that on, which is what we can see there. So you can turn those layers on and off at your leisure. If you're looking at one to help you figure out a certain area, you can do that. You can also turn that off, because I think sometimes it gets a little convoluted when you're trying to look at the maps with the districts, but it's helpful to know where that stuff is.
Thank you.
Any additional questions? Seeing none, I will call this meeting adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you.